Hey guys, Anders here, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be listening to a piece of audio from the latest Battlefield 2042 podcast that came out a couple days ago that I glanced over until very recently. This podcast was between the community manager for Battlefield 2042 and the current weapon game designer, Alexander Formoso, and they were talking about all the vault weapon attachments and how they're going to roll things out and some of the balancing decisions they made, and I came across some infuriating statements that I'll be showing you a little later in this video. But first, some context to better understand the sheer ridiculousness of what you're about to hear. So, a few months back, Alexander Formoso suggested that he was thinking about buffing the G57, which at the time was already overpowered and has already seen an increase in its drum magazine ammo count and headshot multiplier. And ever since the weapon designer made the suggestion that he was going to buff the G57, which was meant by vehement pushback on Twitter, rightfully so, it's been a running joke in my channel every time I go on a kill streak with the G57 that people type in my Twitch channel or the YouTube comments like, buff the Glock, oh my god, that's a buff Glock moment right there. So with that in the back of your head, let's listen to what he had to say in this latest podcast.
Weapons. And as for 2042 all of the warfare weapons, then there's a couple of feedback pieces that we got, like the loudest ones. One is related to the G57, where we know about its performance, and when we started receiving the feedback, we noticed from the data that this feedback was coming mostly from like the top percentile of players. Where we saw like an increase or exclusive usage of the pistol, of the sidearm. But once that usage statistics started to trickle down onto other skill groups, that's when we got like a little bit worried, and this is where we're doing like a targeted feedback, like a targeted change on it.
Are you absolutely fucking kidding me, Alexander Formoso? This statement pisses me off on so many separate levels that I actually determined that I needed to make a video about this. So let's walk through this step by step. Point number one, you don't need any feedback to understand the G57 is overpowered, because weapon balancing is math. The only thing you need to look at are the values associated with the G57. As it stands right now, the G57 is a 1000 RPM in burst mode, hipfire god weapon with a headshot multiplier that belongs on ARs. And to make matters even worse, some of you might remember that they actually increased the drum magazine ammo counts for the G57 in an update that happened a while ago. Point number two, and this makes me irrationally angry, Alexander Formoso goes on to state that when they were receiving feedback for the G57 being overpowered, he specifically stated that it was coming from the top percentages of the player base, and he doesn't seem to value that whatsoever, and he actually waited to see if it would trickle down to the lower skill level percentages of the player base before they actually decided to do fucking anything about it, which is disgusting. Do you understand why the top percentages of the player base would be telling you something maybe perhaps earlier than the lower skill level percentages of the player base? It's because the top percentages of the player base figure things out faster, and they know what they're talking about more than the average player base. Okay? That is why you are receiving early feedback from top percentages of the player base about the G57. It's because they knew about it first, and they knew it was overpowered. Not everyone else knew it was overpowered. And the reason you started to see, data-wise, the G57 increase in uses in the lower percentages of the player base, that's because the player base has been getting mauled by the G57 for 8 months now, and they're starting to figure out, hey, this sidearm is completely broken, I should use it too because that guy just beat my ass with it. And then Alexander goes on to make another absolutely insane observation that he didn't gather anything from. He actually stated that in some cases, top 1% players were using the weapon exclusively. Do you not understand why that might be, Alexander? Also, this harkens back to my first point, weapon balance is math, okay? You don't need any feedback to understand why this weapon would be overpowered if you actually understood why it was overpowered in the first place just by looking at the numbers. The G57 in the hands of a bottom 1% player is the same strength of weapon as it is in the top 1% player's hands. It's statistically identical. It doesn't matter who is using it. It is overpowered regardless. So instead of making a quick change to the G57, which would have benefited the game's balance overall, earlier, you decided to wait all of these months to see if the player base would actually figure out if it's overpowered. Then you decided to nerf it. My brain cells are dying by the second. Why is it that the people in charge of balancing weapons can't understand the weapon they're currently balancing is overpowered before they even put it in the game? If you look at the numbers, you can simply look at all the other weapons, look at how they stack up against this weapon, and determine whether or not it's going to be too much of a force of nature. And I can give a very recent example, the RM68. Some people were joking about the RM68 not getting nerfed in the last update, and now we know why. We know why because they apparently don't make any balance decisions without looking at these fucking dumbass data sheets. You don't need a data sheet to understand that the RM68 is going to be overpowered, okay? You really, really don't. Look at the attachments you gave it. You gave it a short barrel. You gave it extended magazines. It has no recoil. It has an insane RPM. It has an insane damage model. Right then and there, no data sheet required, all right? So hey, this just hurts my brain cells a lot. I felt the need to make a video like this because, honestly, I don't think anyone else would have ever pointed this out. And I don't blame them, because this was about 19 or 20 minutes in to some random Battlefield 2042 podcast, and I just happened to be listening to it, and then he said this shit. I was like, are you serious? I had to play that back like 5 or 6 times, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So once again, DICE's incompetency knows no bounds and doesn't show any signs of stopping. This is particularly worrying if Alexander Formoso is going to be doing any of the weapon balancing for the next title. And yeah, let me know what you think about this. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and of course, subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys later.
It's a sidearm! It's a sidearm, guys! It's a sidearm! Don't worry about it!